So just today, Dakota of Earth came out with this new video, and I really wanted to do a response to it because I'm like, man, this is cool. This is really neat stuff. Stay tuned.
They meditate for hours and hours and hours every day of their life. And I don't know, for some reason I was like, I don't believe that these guys are getting to this kind of place naturally. How could you? This is so intense. Like, you're telling me like these people are meditating and getting to this place? You would never meditate again. It's that strong. So in my head, I was like, man, we're going to blow these guys away and show them what kind of spiritual practices we're doing back in the West, how intense our medicine is. He hit it, and we made sure that there was enough to blast him off, and he just kind of sat there, which is very unusual because most people that smoke this turn into like a dead body, you know, you just collapse. But he just sat there and just took it. And this is what shocked me and changed my whole idea of Hinduism and yoga, was that he said he's been there before. That a few times in his deep meditations, he's been able to reach those places. And I actually believe him.
If you have a yoga power and all times chanting Omkara, all time chanting Ram Ram, then
I didn't believe that you could get to those kind of psychedelic states without taking psychedelics, but now I believe it.
So one of the big issues, you know, that comes with trying to make sense out of religion is trying to figure out where the psychedelic experience fits in, right? How do we make sense out of the psychedelic experience? And is it really meaningful for helping us to make sense out of religion and religious methods, right? Are we talking about the same thing, or are we talking about something different? A lot of people will have a psychedelic experience, as in my own case, and you know, it will have such a profound effect that it will change your religious beliefs, it will change your values, and it will shift your perspective of reality. And for a lot of people, you know, this is dismissed because they say, well, you're just putting chemicals in the brain, it's artificial, right? It's not a real experience because you're mucking about with the wiring of the brain, right? But for those of us who've had an experience, this isn't really a compelling argument, because when you've had these kinds of experiences, you know there's something else going on here. And so in this video, Dakota of Earth, right, he gives DMT to a sadhu, to an Indian yogi, and he describes from the experience that he's been there before, that this is not a new experience for him. And what I really love is how Dakota points out that the sadhu doesn't lay down like most people would on DMT, that he stays in kind of a meditation posture, which is really something. I mean, you're talking about the most potent psychoactive substance there is, and it doesn't even knock this guy out. Like, you know, he's like, you know, his yogic power goes right into it.
And I smoked it before, so I know that it's very strong and that it gives you this incredible spiritual experience. It's not something that you smoke to get high or you smoke to just have fun with. It's very an intense experience. And we had this idea, like, what would happen if we gave one of these sadhus 5-MeO DMT?
But what else I thought was really cool was Dakota talked about how the first time that he used it, on the first trip, he was, you know, Dakota was really giddy and excited, and, you know, he was really amped up. And, you know, the sadhu complained that he was, you know, disrupting the sacredness of the space. And, you know, this is something that I've kind of come to a realization with about for myself. You know, the last time I did actually a psychedelic, it was mushrooms, and it was actually quite a few years ago now. But yeah, it was an experience that, you know, was kind of at a party, right? And it was, you know, I was hosting the party, so I wanted to make it, you know, kind of meaningful. So we did a little prayer before we did the mushrooms, but it really wasn't meaningful at all. Like, no one came out of it with a meaningful experience. And I think it was because it was in the context of a party, and everybody was coming at it with this kind of a party attitude, a party mindset. Whereas, yeah, I think with these substances, the key is really context. That you have to do them in the right environment if you're hoping to have some kind of a meaningful experience. Just doing psychedelics is not enough. It's just a tool, right? And if we want to use it responsibly, if we want to use it effectively, especially if we're talking about, you know, leading people into meaningful experiences, you know, potentially curing depression or treating mental illness, really it's essential that we maintain the sacredness of the space, that we allow people the opportunity to experience these substances in a way that, you know, removes them from more of the irreverence and the party atmosphere. And I feel like that's probably what Dakota was dealing with, right? Because he's giddy, he's excited, he's like, oh my God, this is so cool, right? And there's a kind of irreverence that can come with that. And that can really disrupt the vibe. It can really disrupt the experience, right?
But according to researchers, the preliminary clinical trials are showing absolutely astounding results.
This is very personal for you.
I served 31 years of my life. Part of my job as a SEAL, I was over in Iraq and Afghanistan multiple times. I definitely had traumatic events.
Former Navy SEAL Guy McDermott left the military and joined Glendale Fire as a firefighter paramedic, thinking he could evade his trauma.
After that, I went in a spiral, and it got to a point where I wanted to end my own life.
McDermott says therapy paired with psychedelics saved him.
I was seeing a lot of my friends go down, leave the country, and do these very powerful psychedelics, and they were coming back with this new profound sense of life. I went down to experience it myself, and my life couldn't be any better than it is now.
And, you know, I'm right now thinking of my good friend, Dean. You'll know him from the book. You know, we've recently reconnected, and I've talked about some of the, you know, experiences we've been having together lately in a previous video. And, you know, he went through a really bad depression. You know, he gained a bunch of weight. He was up to like 300 pounds, and, you know, it was not good. He was not in a good place. And he got a prescription for antidepressants, but he said that the problem with antidepressants is that they really seem to prevent you from feeling much of anything. It's, you know, it's not really that you feel happy, it's that you just don't feel sad, but you don't feel anything, right? And he said that he felt that antidepressants had probably done some damage to his brain. He said that he felt that it had genuinely disrupted the way his brain worked. And, you know, he got first into marijuana, and he was using that. He got off of the antidepressants, and he said that actually smoking weed was kind of having a better effect for him. And but he still felt that he was really readily sliding back into the depression, that he was not really coming out of it, that it was always kind of pulling him back in.
Everyone knew that whoever let the sadness overtake him would sink into the swamp.
You're doing fine, Artax.
Artax! You're sinking! Come on! Turn around! You have to now! Come on! Artax!
Me talk about my experiences and what I've been through, and just the experiences I've had. So he decided to go out and get himself LSD, and he said it was a transformative experience, that he really went into it. You know, he did it alone at home, safe environment. It was, you know, it was just he prepared himself, and he created a space, and, you know, he spent the day. And when he came out of it, he said that he felt that he had genuinely made real progress, more progress than he had made through antidepressants substance or through marijuana or through really anything else. And I think that testimony really speaks to the power of these things, that, you know, you really are getting in touch with something that's real. And what's more is, you know, for this sadhu to say that, you know, he's been to this place before, that he's had this experience before without psychedelics, to me lends credibility to the idea that this is a real space, that we are really coming into contact with the spirit world, that this is not just chemicals mucking up the brain. One of the things that I kind of propose as a hypothesis, as a theory for why psychedelics work is, you know, I like to use the analogy of a computer, right? We can think of the brain as being like a computer. It's got its own wiring, you know, there's a data structure there. It's not a perfect analog, but it's pretty common to use a computer as a kind of metaphor for the brain. And if you stop and think about it, there are two ways that you can disrupt computer function, right? You can unplug it, which is like death, right? You just rob the system of power, and that's a complete shutdown. But you could also introduce so much static, so much electromagnetic radiation into the computer that it simply loses the ability to really process information anymore. And that's really in many ways paralleled by the idea of shutting it down. These are two ways that you could sort of shut down a computer system, right? You could shut it down by robbing it of power, but you get a very similar effect if you just start introducing so much static and chaotic information into the system that the system no longer functions. And really, it is like a shutdown, right? The system crashes. And so I think in many ways, what we're seeing with substances like DMT and many psychedelics is something similar. This is why I think they produce these kinds of near-death experiences, because these substances, in most cases, and actually in pretty much all cases, they imitate neurotransmitters, especially serotonin. And serotonin is really what's responsible for communication between neurons in the brain. And so by introducing these substances, what's really happening is you're introducing a medium through which these substances are radically altering the ability of the brain to process and produce information, meaningful information. And in many ways, this parallels death, I think. This is a theory that I present to you guys for consideration. The idea here, and the reason I bring this up, is that if this is the case, if this is in fact what these psychedelic substances are doing, and they are in fact allowing us to access some aspect of the spirit world, then essentially, you know, we're dealing with something that's really quite revolutionary, that's really significant. I'm just thinking, you know, I just heard today about how Pope Francis has blessed same-sex couples. I got to look a little more into this and find out a little bit more. But the papacy is starting to shift the church's stance by acting in a more welcoming and opening way to homosexuals and homosexual relationships. And so Western spirituality is really at a crisis, right? We see this in so many different ways, where people feel disorientated, they feel lost, they don't know what's right, what's wrong, and they feel like religion holds really no validity. And these substances really hold out the prospect of allowing people to have an experience for themselves, where they're no longer left wondering, no longer left theorizing and conjecturing, but really you could come away with a very real experience. So I would really, you know, I want to encourage you guys to, you know, check out Dakota Averse channel. I really like his content. He does great stuff over there. And as always, guys, thanks for watching.